All right, so what I want to do here is demonstrate this JavaScript library, and it's called PeerJS, and this is a peer-to-peer communication system using something called WebRTC, and this it tells you all about it, but this example is really good. Now, I tried this example kind of from within a, um, a college, and it seems like it was blocked there. So you might need to do this from your phone or from the outside. But if you just go to this, it's the peer-to-peer queue system, and you'll understand why it's called a queue system here in a second. That's just part of the example, and so we can click on it. And what I like about these is they're two files. They're just HTML files, and they have everything you need in those files. You can just look right at them. This first one is the receiver, and the second is the sender. I have the receiver opened up over here and was actually looking at it before. And so I'm going to open up the sender on this side, and just kind of bring this over so we can see them both at the same time. Normally you would have these on two different computers, and it's really fun. You can find somebody else to do this with, and it actually works, and you can communicate with them. So I'm just going to refresh this. Again, this is called the receiver, and it's kind of where things start in this example. And it has generated one of these IDs, and if you copy it and paste it over here, and this is, of course, if you're doing this with somebody else, you would send them the ID through some other system. See, okay, now it says it's connected here, and when you click these, you see this changes down here. And why it's called queue is the idea would be that this receiver side would be visible behind the stage of a play, and it would send cues to the actors. That's just the example, right? And so fade, I guess, means to something to the actors, right? And go, I mean, starts, and I don't know, you get the point. And you can look at the code and understand how this works. But also, it's just as cool here. You can send messages and from one side to the other, and see that it received it over here, and then you can even clear messages, and then you can send a message back. And I've actually played around with this quite a bit. The first thing I did was I changed the IDs, because if you click it here, it doesn't highlight the whole thing because of these dashes. So I changed it to underscore, or just got rid of that altogether. And that makes it easier to click. And I also made where you can send it as part of the URL, so I added the QR code to this and stuff. But this is basically how it works. It's really neat. I was even able to send images across this thing. And if you just, and again, here's the kind of the toolkit down here, but in this case we're just going to view page source, and so you see the page source of the receiver side, and same thing here. You can view page source, and this is the page source of the send, and you can, and this is, I love this sort of HTML because you can learn so much. I mean, here's your style sheets right here, and you can really just read it. This stuff was, I think, meant to be read and even written by hand. Here's where it calls the driver, right? It calls the driver remotely from this website. Of course, you can also copy it down to your server and call it locally, and or to your computer, and then you have these functions, and they don't have to be different. There doesn't have to be a sender and receiver. It can just be people communicating with each other, and there's so much there's a lot that you can learn from this just by observing it and changing it. This is how the elements of the page are set up, and they have classes, which is controlled by your style sheet right there if you wanted to look at your style sheet, and then they also have IDs, right? So send message box, that's where you put the message, obviously. This is usually called, I would say, camel text. It's the first word is a small letter, and then the subsequent words start with a capital letter, right? You see that pattern over and over again. Send message box, send button, clear message button, and this, of course, is the HTML. Down here, this line it's a script. There's really no body to this script, but it's initialized with this library, and then that's used afterwards here. I don't know if that can all be one thing, but then the next thing we see, right, is, and this is default, that it's text JavaScript, but then we see this function. I would say this is an anonymous function because it doesn't have a name, and it's delimited with that, I don't know, that it's not a bracket but parentheses, I guess, and then you'll see the other one over at the end is right here, and then this part means to run the whole thing, and that tends to encapsulate everything. But because so it's like but it's called an anonymous function because it doesn't have a name and it just gets run immediately. Sometimes they're called lambda functions. Then this is pretty standard. You have your variables that you set up, but of course, the real fun is in trying to change this and tweak this, and I have some examples of this that are a little bit different, but that's the peer-to-peer system.